Welcome, everyone, once again to 41 is the Mic. I am Matt Derrick from Chiefs Digest, alongside Nick Jacobs, your schedule enthusiast from KSHB 41.
Nope.
Mick, happy Mother's Day to everyone in your clan.
No.
Hope it's a good one.
Yeah, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there, all over the 41 is the Mic land.
Or as I think it was legendary, maybe San Diego Padres announcer Jerry Coleman once said on Mother's Day, happy birthday to all the mothers out there.
Yeah, exactly. Nailed it right there.
Nailed it. Well, we're having fun off the top because, there's not a whole lot of news going in Chiefs Kingdom right now, but one of the stories going on, Nick, is not the greatest of news. So
yeah.
We want to have a little fun before we transition into just the issues that are going on with Rashee Rice right now. There's obviously a lot of he said, she said, and truthfully, we don't have a lot of information, Nick. So how do you look at this right now?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, we know everything that happened with the racing down the highway, and obviously, you have the dash cam video. You've got the attorney that's made the statements for Rice and everything, and confirmed that he was driving one of the vehicles. So, I mean, you have that part, but if you look, it took a couple weeks for all that to come out. And that's what happens in life. That's what happens in the real world. Not everything's a Law and Order episode where it's all done within an hour. You just got to let things unfold. So with this situation right now, you've got to let things unfold and see what is or isn't accurate or what is and isn't true. The only key part this time around for Rice is he doesn't have the benefit of the doubt anymore. Like, unfortunately, you have that goodwill built up that's just accepted because you haven't done anything that the fan base can remember or the Chiefs coaching staff or, organization could remember when you got there. So everybody has faith and trust in you. Then when something like that occurs, that gets taken away, unfortunately. And then there's also some doubt that anytime another incident pops up, you're like, well, this one happened, so who knows if this one did or didn't happen. So, you've lost that benefit of the doubt, as like I called it. And then on top of it, I mean, if this ends up becoming reality or ends up being proven true, then at that point you have a pattern. And that's where that starts to get a little concerning, is what's causing this pattern? Why did this pattern happen? And that's where the organization, they're going to have to get to the bottom to find out if it's something that they can all collectively fix together, or if it's something that is going to be, they're going to have to be mindful of, or how they're going to have to approach that going forward. And then it puts into doubt future earnings long term, because if the way he was headed right now, you're like, you know what, maybe he gets another big contract, but you don't know, because you're just, I hate to say it, you're waiting day by day to see if something else pops up. And so it'll be interesting if this ends up being true. We don't know right now, and what information comes out of this, and then what happens in the months ahead, if there's any other incidents that occur, or if everything just kind of stays even keel like everybody was expecting this offseason to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's way too early to come up with any conclusions about what's going to happen, what's this going to mean as far as an NFL suspension. I think we'll have at least a little bit of a barometer turn around May 20th. That's when the Chiefs will begin their third phase of OTAs. And if something drastic were to happen in the next step, for instance, whether the Chiefs were to make a decision to keep him away from team activities, or the NFL was to put him on the commissioner exempt list, that's probably your line of demarcation of sorts. I mean, that's when at least the team gets back together. The media is going to be there on the 22nd, so there's at least a deadline of sorts there. So I think that both the NFL and the Chiefs have a little bit of time to gather facts before they do anything drastic. But you're right. I mean, it's at best case scenario, there's going to be the question of what is Rashee's judgment, and is he putting himself into bad situations? The worst case is that he's going to have more charges against him, and that's a whole other situation. And I know, at least from talking to people within the organization, that there's some difficulty here because Rashee Rice has not been a bad teammate. He's not been a locker room cancer of any sort. I mean, this is, two different sides of the same person. I mean, it's not like Rashee is a knucklehead in the building and causing problems. He hasn't been that issue. I mean, this is something that's totally different. So there's players that are like that. I mean, there are some players that cause trouble in the building and don't get into trouble outside. There's players who do both. They cause trouble in the building and trouble outside. Rashee is was, I mean, one of the one of the first. I mean, they're ones that are not causing any problems. They're good employees. They do their job. They help out. They're good teammates, except that off the field and on his personal life, he's obviously stumbling into trouble. And that can be difficult for teams to reconcile sometimes and to figure out how to really, what's the root of the problem and move on, like you said. So that's kind of where the Chiefs are with that. From a football standpoint, they brought in Zay Jones on Thursday for a visit, did not end up signing him. He ends up signing with the Arizona Cardinals. What's your kind of thought on that, Nick? I mean, Zay is 28 now. I think he's going to be 29 if he hasn't already turned 29. Older receiver coming off an injury last year, although 2 years ago in Jacksonville with our old friend Doug Peterson, had a career season. So it's not like good football in this style of offense isn't very far back in its past.
Yeah, I think the Chiefs having him come in for a visit was twofold in my book. One was to get a look at him and do a physical to see where he's at after last year, because I know he had the knee issue with one of the ligaments, and then he also had another injury throughout the year that he battled through. And so if he did have surgery, you want to see where that is at. Or if he didn't, how are those legs looking? How is he looking overall? Is that something worth investing in at about $2 million a year, push it to $4.5 to $5 million on a 1-year gig, with, unlikely to be earned incentives and stuff like that, or likely to be earned, however you want to frame it or shape that. So, and I think I just believe the Chiefs are going to need to, I felt this all along, and I've felt this all along, that I still think you need an insurance policy for Rashee Rice in case something does occur, or if he does get suspended. I just think you need an additional veteran to be able to be on that roster and be able to kind of help with the possibility of not having him there from a snap count perspective that can blend with Justin Watson and have that along with Brown and Worthy, and give Worthy and Brown time to integrate in the offense as well and not have so much pressure on them to be on point immediately if they were to not have Rice early on in the year or not.
Yeah, and situations like these, I always look at it and try to look at it from the player perspective. We can always kind of look at it and talk about, well, hey, this makes sense for the Chiefs. Why wouldn't it make sense for the player? And I mean, I get it. I mean, it's the same thing we've talked about a little bit, like bringing in a veteran left tackle like Donovan Smith. I mean, does he want to come to Kansas City when, they just drafted a left tackle in the second round and would probably be a backup because maybe they want this guy to start? I mean, if you're a veteran and you want to play and you're a left tackle, Kansas City might not be the right choice right now. I can see that too if you are maybe and I know, hey, a lot of players view themselves as tier one players, but if you are a guy like this point, Zay Jones in his career, how could you not look at this and think to yourself, wait a minute, even if I come here, even if Rashee Rice doesn't play it down this year, I might still be the fourth option because, Pat's got a relationship with Justin Watson. They want to play Worthy. They're going to play Brown. Where am I going to fit in here? Am I going to get enough balls? So I can see where that might be a challenge, especially, with the players that are out there. I mean, unless you've got somebody who might be ring shopping, I think you're going to have somebody who is certainly facing the reality that, wait a minute, I know I'm not going to be maybe the top three options. Am I okay with being number 4? And honestly, maybe consider yourself number 5 because of Travis Kelce. I mean, that's a position I don't think that some receivers want to put themselves into unless they want to win, unless they want a championship. And there's going to be a couple of guys like that. But you always have to remember that money usually is the trump card. So guys they want money and they want to play. And can Kansas City give them at least one or the other? I don't know. I don't know what they would have promised, Zay Jones. I don't know what they would have told him. But I just see money's hard enough for the Chiefs to come up with, but playing time and a guarantee, being a role, especially if some of these guys are friends of like Richie James, they're going to look at that and say, wait a minute, it didn't work out for my guy Richie. Well, might not work out for me either.
At the end of the day, it comes down to two things if you want to play for the Chiefs. Are you willing to compete? Are you willing to push yourself and your teammates to compete? And above all else, do you want to win a championship? If you want to do those things, then you'll fit right in Kansas City. But if you're worried about trying to make the most money for yourself 2-3 years down the road, or you want a certain amount of snaps or certain amount of catches, then go play for a loser.
I could not have said that better myself.
Just being honest.
That kind of fits in like with what I said about Chris Jones. And if Chris Jones wanted to make the most money, he was absolutely happy to get the best deal out there from somebody else and win 4 games every year. You're right. So,
Short and sweet, man. That's how I do it.
there you go. Well, speaking of winning games, we are going to, as of Wednesday night, finally get to start talking about the 2024 schedule, Nick, and where those wins might be coming for the Chiefs. You and I both, I think, would have to fit into the category of schedule nerds.
You already called me a schedule enthusiast, so we've already laid that on the table at the start of the podcast.
We have, and I'm going to throw myself in there as a schedule nerd because, the whole process fascinates me as far as just how the NFL goes about building it. And I love picking apart the schedule and trying to figure out when games are going to be and what networks they might be on. Mm-hmm. And especially, it's a lot more fun now with the Chiefs because you used to be able, I remember, not so long distant past, Nick, it would be like, okay, well, the Chiefs are going to play at noon every Sunday, except there's going to be a bunch of 3 o'clock games with the AFC West games, and then maybe they'll get on prime time. They'll get to play on a Thursday night, Nick. But now, I mean, it's I do think there's a chance the Chiefs might play as many as 2 noon games this year. So
it's
maybe not even that. Maybe not even that. But
it's not going to be a lot for a while, that's for sure. But I do think there's some scheduling stuff you and I will probably want to clear up from getting to listen to Michael North and everything to kind of get people ahead of some things. So what were some things you took away from people that don't know? I believe it's Sal Kbachi and Matt Beauvais. Matt Beauvais works at one of our Scripps affiliates. It's the ABC affiliate up in Buffalo. Because Scripps owns multiple stations, that aren't all the same network. So Matt Beauvais works at the ABC affiliate up there. They do a podcast called Always Game Day in Buffalo. They had Michael North on for about an hour and a half. Matt and I's goal is to have Michael North on. We'll see if we can get it all worked out. We started the scheduling process a couple of weeks ago, so we'll work on that. But yeah, Matt, what were some things you took away, and I'll give a couple things I took away from it.
And for those who don't know, Mike North has been the VP of broadcasting for the NFL for a long time.
Almost 30 years, I think.
Yeah, I mean, so he is the guy when it comes to all the ins and outs about how the TV schedule is put together, how they end up on all the networks, what times, everything. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, there were some things that I certainly did not know that I learned as far as that, especially a couple of the big standouts to me is we talk about being able to protect games and the networks being able to, make sure that they've got certain games on their air. And one thing Mike said is nobody can protect the game in May. When they really talk about protecting games, it's more about during the season when, CBS can say, wait a minute, you can't move this Chiefs game to prime time because we want this one. And let's face it, I mean, if that's the case, we're talking about a 3:25 Chiefs game because those are the marquee games. So they don't want to lose those games. But it's not like in May that they can say, wait a minute, you can't put the Chiefs Bengals on prime time because we want that on CBS. Can't do that. But the NFL does have rules as far as teams like the Chiefs about how many times that they're going to be on each network and that they've got to service those broadcast partners. So, and it changes. It's not like the same team every year because it depends on how good they are, what their superstars are, how marquee they are. But let's face it. I mean, right now, the Chiefs and the Cowboys are always a premier team. But right now, the Chiefs and the Cowboys are the 2 premier TV draws in the NFL. And it's just about making sure that all the TV partners, NBC, CBS, Fox, Amazon, ESPN, all get their games and the number of times that they want to have the Chiefs because everybody wants the Chiefs as many times as they can.
Yes. Yeah, you're not wrong about that. One of the things that Michael said that I really kind of took away with it, one, NFL now handles preseason opponents. And used to be teams could do it in the past, but it kind of turned into a point from what North said that like there was 2 teams that were always left out, didn't have anybody to play against. So they just take care of that now. A team can suggest an opponent or 2 if they want to. And the reason you do that from a preseason perspective is there may be certain rosters you're wanting to take a look at that are similar to your scheme. So you can maybe get somebody. So for the Chiefs in the past, that would have been the Packers. Maybe the 49ers have something that, the Chiefs would want to see if they weren't playing them this year. But, and if they weren't playing the Jaguars, you might want to see that. But the Chiefs normally try to keep it as NFC heavy as they can and an opponent they're not going to play in that year. And like Matt said, there's a minimum number of appearances each team has. We don't know the number. Michael North couldn't give the number, so you don't know. We'll count up how many times the Chiefs are on CBS in May and say, well, that might be the minimum right there. So that'd be something to look for on Wednesday night. I thought it was there's no more than 3 night games in a home stadium is what they want. So we all see it as quote unquote prime time. They don't want any home team to have more than 3 night games that would be at 7 o'clock, whether it's on a Thursday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. They don't want that more than 3 times in a year for fans that have to travel and deal with that time. So I thought that one was really intriguing. And this is the official number. There's no more than 6 night games on a schedule. They can flex the team into a 7th, but the Chiefs should not be able to get more than 6 primetime games and flexed into a 7th if there is a case, and that would be the final week of the year at that point. Matt, were there any others that stuck out to you? I don't want to take them all if you got any more.
Yeah, some of the big ones right there for me. And, obviously we know there's no limit on the noon and the 3 o'clock games. I mean, you can be anywhere you want to. And last year we saw that the Chiefs had one originally scheduled Sunday noon game all season. They got a second one when the Patriots game got flexed. That was the first time, obviously, the NFL had ever flexed out of Monday night. So the Chiefs, oddly enough, I mean, last year they had 6 games. They didn't get flexed into a 7th, but they got flexed down to 5 when the Patriots needed to get out of that Monday night game. Was interesting. I mean, we kind of suspected it, but I kind of surprised that Mike North put it out there that, the reason why that game was flexed is because the Patriots wanted out of prime time. Their season had gone south. They did not want to get embarrassed and put that product out there on a Monday night game. So it worked out that, hey, CBS wanted the game. They were glad to get it back. There was a game that they could flex into that Monday night game that worked out pretty well. This wasn't discussed in relation to the Chiefs, but I think it's going to impact the Chiefs big time. He's talked about how probably in the next few years, I mean, there's going to be 8 international games, and the Chiefs want to be aggressive in playing international games. There's a chance they could play an international game this year. I mean, the Chiefs at the Panthers would be an absolutely prime game to put in Germany because the Panthers are going to be the home team for that one, and the Chiefs are volunteering every single year. I mean, Mark Donovan told me that at the Super Bowl during one of our discussions, and they're going to raise their hand to go overseas every time that they get a chance. So even though the NFL has like a little plan as far as teams playing internationally, once every 4 years essentially, that's going to increase with the number of games. But they've also made it so that teams can volunteer early, and the Chiefs are going to volunteer. So I don't know that they will, but there's 3 teams on the Carolina Panthers schedule that has Germany as one of their international markets. It's the Chiefs, Tampa, and the Giants. I mean, all 3 of those teams I think would be ideal candidates to play in Germany this year.
Yeah, and something you're talking about the international, I'll kind of get to, is whenever North was talking about the Eagles versus the Packers. That's going to be on that Friday after the Chiefs game. That's going to be an international game. The way he phrased it made it sound like a big reason NBC was going to get the Eagles Packers on Peacock was because of the marketing they were willing to do in the upcoming Olympics on NBC, and just how big that was going to be in August for the most part, and how heavy they would promote that game, and just how much they would add it in as a promo to where NFL's not really paying for that awareness. NBC's taking care of it in their own Olympic coverage, and that they were also going to have the Thursday night before with the Chiefs game to help promote it as well, to remind people even more. So you're getting a whole month of runway of promoting that game and putting that in people's heads that, hey, this is going to be on Peacock, Eagles, Packers, and they made it a marquee enough game to where it's 2 quality opponents that were in the playoffs last year that's going to go down there. And North hinted with the way the Chiefs performed in Germany, he basically said that the fans are getting savvier internationally, and they do want to see marquee games over there. So I think you're actually going to start seeing legitimate playoff either contenders or teams that were in the playoffs before really start to get more of those international ones. Another big one, and he did say the Chiefs-Dolphins playoff game really helped them in terms of justifying streaming not only on Peacock but everywhere else, that the numbers they were able to do didn't have the drop off that it sounded like they were anticipating, potentially, if maybe or maybe not on that. The 325 game is actually the money spot for max ratings. We would all think that Sunday Night Football is, or maybe Monday night, but with the picture he painted, it's perfect for West Coast. It's perfect for Mountain. It's kind of the singular focus on either team for the most part, and the product numbers wise isn't diluted. Because if you take some games and you move like a Chiefs game is in 325, move it to noon, it may be competing with 4 or 5 other games in different markets, so fans aren't able to see that Chiefs game. But when it's a singular standalone 325, that is when it does most of its max numbers. And that kind of seems like that's starting to be the sweet spot for the most part for you to get from coast to coast, get as many eyeballs as possible on that, let alone if it's a standalone game like Christmas. And the one that's interesting about Christmas, obviously, what Matt and I, have chatted about, Netflix. Originally, there was rumors that the schedule was going to come out this past week. Then it's since leaked out that Netflix joined the party to try to get the Christmas Day games. So my guess is, and this is just a guess on my part, they were trying to see if there's any final bidders that wanted to outbid Netflix for it. And my guess is they probably won't, because Netflix has more than, I don't remember how many subscribers I've heard they have across the globe. But for the NFL to put this live across the globe, I think they're really intrigued to see what these numbers can do on the biggest streaming subscriber that has been around for more than a decade now. And if the numbers do really well on here, I got a feeling like Netflix is going to join the party, and it wouldn't stun me down the road if packages change and how they approach them, and it turns into more bidding for certain things specifically. And so it's not always this network gets this on this time, and it changes a little bit in that front. But what they were talking about with the Christmas thing is they would have to do it in a way where those teams would play on Saturday ahead of the Wednesday Christmas. So instead of it being a Sunday, Thursday, like we'd see with most things, it would be a Saturday, Wednesday. And those teams, the 4 teams are going to be involved, would essentially have to play the other one. And what I mean by that is you may have a division in a conference, or hypothetically, I'm just doing this, I'm not saying it's going to be the Chiefs, but I'm saying hypothetically, you have 2 AFC West opponents that are going to play whatever division, whether it would be an AFC North that the Chiefs play this year or an NFC South. And then those two pair with each other for that Wednesday game. So everybody's on the same even plane, or as even a plane as they can get for that. And it sounds like also that it seemed like they really like that noon window, and they like that 3:00 window, and it seems like there's only going to be 2 games from the way North. Didn't you kind of feel that's how North was describing that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it would be the 2 games. They had not figured out yet what the windows would be. I mean, this is like you said. I mean, what was kind of the hint that maybe Netflix was the player here, because they hadn't even decided the partners yet as of 3 weeks ago publicly about where these games were going to be, who it was going to be, what the times are going to be. But you're right. I mean, it's they're obviously, the one option would be to just go to divisional games, but it could be intra-division, AFC, NFC across. I mean, the Chiefs obviously play the NFC South. So if you wanted to have the Bucs and the Saints and the Chargers and the Chiefs play a little round robin in those 2 weeks, you could do that. The North, like you said, I mean, the Ravens, Bengals, Chiefs, Chargers would be a phenomenal set of teams to play in that series. But yeah, I mean, honestly, I mean, that scenario, the way they set it up, is probably the best case I could possibly think of that. At least they're acknowledging that they don't want to put these teams into a huge deficit. Right. They would most likely, I mean, assuming that none of these teams have a bye week the week before, they would have a 6 days between games. Then it would be both teams would have the exact same 5 games, and then they would have basically a little mini bye before the following week. So, I think there's almost actually a slight benefit to being in that game, because I think you'd end up getting a little bit of a late mini bye going into the playoffs. So, and maybe that'll be one of the reasons why the NFL doesn't want to give it to a team like the Chiefs. Maybe they want just competitive games that are attractive, but don't want a marquee team that's going to get a huge advantage of having a mini bye late in the season. I don't know, but there's no doubt. I mean, the Chiefs could play, I think, just about any window, except I don't think they would put them on Thanksgiving. I mean, I could be surprised, but it just feels like that the NFL wants to put the Chiefs in games that's going to increase viewership. And they probably don't need to do a lot on Thanksgiving. I think they're going to get their viewers anyway. And I'm glad you brought up the point as well about the 325 games because, those, Mike North said, might hit 40 million viewers with the right teams. And you're never going to get that on Sunday night. Sunday night's a better night than Monday night. But, that 325 on Sunday, since it is going national, usually if it's up against anything, it's up against the game that started at 305. And that's like going to be maybe two games on the other network, maybe sometimes even just a standalone, just by itself. So, that's the huge attractive window. And, the other thing I think that also stood out to me, one of the things you kind of touched on too, is that, as far as how they select these teams for some of these windows specifically, I mean, there's something about, one that they do at least now start to pay attention to rest, which it doesn't sound to me like they did a whole lot in the past. I mean, rest is a fairly recent intervention. You didn't have to worry about it when Mike started in like the 1980s, but now rest is a big thing because you have so many different windows. I don't know how much they were paying attention to rest, especially the net rest deficit, like Warren Sharps pointed out that the Chiefs had late last season. But it seems like they're paying more attention to it now than they used to.
Yeah, and then the final piece I'll add to it, and then we can get our predictions. Is the must-see teams that he said right now are the must-see teams. So it's the Chiefs, the 49ers, the Bills, the Ravens, the Cowboys, and the Eagles. Those right now are who they classify as the must-see teams that are performing the best from a ratings perspective outside of their own markets. So those are kind of the teams that we'll probably see in the 5 or 6 nighttime range, more than most, and that's what's going to be interesting. So, Matt, any final thoughts before we get to our predictions?
I think we touched on everything. I'm ready for some predictions, man.
Yeah, and Matt and I both wanted to do this because one, we spent an hour and a half listening to the podcast as we're both intrigued by it. But two, there's a lot of things we both learned from it that aren't necessarily readily available publicly about it. Just like, for example, I mean, some people know, and I'll put this out there last, is the Sports Broadcasting Act of 1961. That's out there. So the NFL cannot, from the 2nd September through the 2nd December, they cannot have a game past 6 o'clock on a Friday night or Saturday night, if I remember correctly.
I don't think you can do it even on a Saturday period, but after 6 o'clock on a Friday and all day Saturday. Yeah.
Right. And so that was so high schools didn't have to compete with it. If there's a college game that night or, college games on Saturday, it kept that competitive edge for them to kind of keep football going. And as North said in the podcast, the thing he mentioned is that they want to continue to grow all of football, not just NFL. So it's not something that they're trying to fight or deal with. But when those windows do open up, which as you and I had talked about before, it's going to be interesting that Saturday before Christmas, what times they have those games, because if I remember correctly, the college football playoffs is going to start. Is it start this year or next year on that Saturday?
I believe it is this year, but I think that I think the date though, isn't it? Because it's like the second Sunday in December. So I think the window for the Sports Broadcast Act ends right before that. I think that's the only reason why the NFL can get away with, because the Sports Broadcasting Act didn't anticipate the college football having a playoff in mid-December.
But that's going to be an interesting time to see when they do it, because technically ESPN is a partner. And if there are other partners involved in that they're going to need to really kind of be mindful of it and kind of space it out collectively to where maybe you have a college football game, then you have a NFL game, then maybe there's a college football game, then another NFL game, or how they go about that to try to be a good partner to another, network that's paying them money for NFL throughout the year.
Yeah, and you bring that up, and it makes me think about the fact that if that's the case, in the NFL, particularly on that Wednesday and the Saturday too, but if they're playing early windows, you might be limiting at least the number, but maybe even limiting at all a West Coast team, because a West Coast team is not going to play a noon kickoff somewhere on the East Coast. They're not going to do that, for the most part. I mean, usually when a West Coast team plays on the road, they're playing a 3 o'clock kickoff. That makes much more sense than having them playing at 10 a.m. on the West Coast. So, it'll be interesting to see how that impacts what teams are selected if they have to play those early windows on a Saturday.
Yeah, and I got a feeling you'll see at least 2 of those must-see teams in a combination of those. But it's now time, Matt. What are your predictions for the Chiefs 2024 schedule to be out on Wednesday at 7 o'clock?
Well, I mean, I have some safe predictions, like,
Go for it.
the Chiefs are going to have 6 primetime games. Um, looking at it last year, I mean, I think we're kind of you kind of see the same thing. I mean, one, we know they're going to open the season on a Thursday, so they're going to play another game on Thursday for Amazon. So they're going to have 2 Thursday night games, probably 2 Sunday night games, 2 Monday night games. I'm I'm really torn. I'm thinking that I think the Ravens and the Texans are going to be home primetime games. Chargers is maybe the other one that might be a sneaky primetime game, because if CBS protects the Bengals again, I mean, I could see that one being on a CBS. But I mean, the Chiefs have, to me, a lot more potential primetime windows than they had last year, which is what I think really makes it difficult for late time games. But I think that the Chiefs will play the Chargers at some point on a primetime game. I think that's just too attractive with Harbaugh and Andy Reid. I think that's just too good of a matchup, and probably fairly early in the season. My really outrageous guess is the Chiefs might play in Germany against the Carolina Panthers. That one just makes too much sense to me. I know the Chiefs would want to do it. I don't know whether the NFL will, but that's the other thing, is that and Mike North talked about, was they were blown away by how many Chief fans turned out in Germany. And I don't know how many Carolina Panther fans there are in Germany. So if they want that stadium packed and they want a great atmosphere, they'd put the Chiefs in that game, because it is going to be it's going to be in Munich. It's where the Chiefs, their base of operation is. They've got the relationship with FC Bayern, the soccer team there, I guess the football team there. So I think that would be an absolutely great matchup. Trying to think. I went through trying to figure out what I think is going to be the noon game. Chiefs at Atlanta. I can't figure out anywhere to put that other than noon. So I'm betting that is the Chiefs 1 Sunday noon game.
Okay. Are your predictions final, sir?
For the most part. I haven't drilled into all the predictions. I want to see where you're at as far as your schedule. I didn't know if you did the whole 18-week schedule and where the bye week is and everything.
I mean, the bye week normally seems to be sometime one of the 3 or 4 weeks in November. So I think it'll be somewhere around there. I'm personally expecting like second or third week in November. Just me personally, a week ahead of Thanksgiving, kind of in that range somewhere. I think that's where that'll be. For the opener, obviously Matt and I have talked about extensively, but we'll do it one more time. Well, we'll probably do it on the Q&A too. Somebody will ask. Houston Texans that's like my second or third. Bucks is my number one, just because I think it makes a ton of sense to get Tampa kind of featured, get Baker Mayfield featured, get Mike Evans featured, and try to have some promise there to kind of help Fox partnership down the road in some of the games ahead. New Orleans would be kind of the sneaky one that I could see, just simply because this is how you brand it. And for people that don't know, there's another thing North brought up. They like to do storylines in the first 4 weeks. After that, they just try to do more playoff implications down middle to late in the season. But if they're going to do the storylines, they do them earlier. Like if Kirk Cousins is going back to Minnesota, they want to do that in the first 4 weeks of the season. So for the Chiefs, the one that could be a storyline is the Chiefs take on the Saints. Where the storyline is, though, is that the Super Bowl is in New Orleans. So you kind of start that theme for the Chiefs road to three-peat. They take on the New Orleans Saints, on their road to get to New Orleans. And that, and that's how you hype that up. That's how you promo build that up. Is it stupid? Yes. But Carr's the quarterback there, so you don't have a lot to work with. So, you just don't have that marquee quarterback. With Stroud, you do, but I think if you're really trying to have a coming out party for the Houston Texans in prime time, you put that Chiefs-Houston Texans game in week 4, week 5, week 6 range, and you put them on a Sunday or Monday night, and you really kind of give them that window. The primetime games that I think, outside of that first one we talked about and the Texans, like you said, I think Chargers Chiefs, I think it'll be in LA to try to give them a favorable matchup on this one, but I know they want to showcase Harbaugh against the Chiefs at some point, either somewhere in that week 6 to 12 range. I'm expecting that to happen somewhere. Just hunch, just from watching schedules, and as Matt said, nerding out on it over the years. That's kind of the window to where you make that on Amazon Thursday night, and that's kind of how that one goes. The Buffalo Bills one, I'm curious if they're going to try to put it on Sunday or Monday. but I think they're gonna cut it in half. And this is what I think. I think between the Chiefs Bengals, the Bills Chiefs, and then the Ravens Chiefs, I think they are going to split those up threefold. So I think one's going to be on CBS, one's going to be on NBC, and then the other one's going to be on Monday night. However they go about that, I don't know. But if I don't think they would do Bengals Chiefs on CBS 2 years in a row like that when it was the conference championship the week before. I think they give CBS Chiefs Bills personally, and Chiefs Ravens would be intriguing on Sunday or Monday. And then you take the other one and the Chiefs Bengals and you put that on. I haven't seen the Chiefs Bengals on Monday night in a while. I would actually like to see that, and I'd love to see Chiefs Ravens on Sunday night. But I know we've seen Chiefs Ravens on both, so I don't know how many. I think I'm up to four. I think I'm up to 4 of 6, just hypothetically. The Chiefs Niners Super Bowl rematch. I mean, that could easily go on any of them and make sense, but I think that one is gifted to Fox. I think Fox gets that one because here's the thing you guys need to realize: network wise, they don't have nobody's set in stone. If they want to give, it used to be whenever a team is at home, it was on. If the Niners were at home, it would hypothetically maybe be on CBS. And then if the Niners were in Kansas City, Niners were in Kansas City, that'd be on Fox. And it used to kind of be back and forth, and they don't have that. It's, as Michael North called it many times, it's a jump ball now. So, but I think they give the Chiefs 49ers to Fox because the Super Bowl being on CBS this past year, and kind of try to even it out for partners in terms of where these locations and ability to tell the storyline is. So and then let's see. The sneaky one I think is going to happen that I don't think people are going to see coming is I think the Chiefs Browns in Cleveland. The Travis Kelce returning home. I think that one is going to go either in a Sunday or Monday night matchup. That's where I think that one's going to go. Because there's too much of a storyline there with Travis Kelce returning home, and you put that in prime time, and you find a spot that's based on Taylor Swift's Eras tour that could work with it, and then you give one of those partners max ratings. And then the final one, this is my final one, Matt. I kind of wonder if either the Chiefs Steelers or one of the AFC West matchups is on the day after Thanksgiving. And that's where the Chiefs get that bye from.
Yeah.
Because the Chiefs, for people that know, the Chiefs Raiders was potentially going to be on the Black Friday Amazon game at 2:00 to 5:00, and they weren't able to get it done. But I think if there's two markets, and this may be where it comes into play, Matt, to where maybe it's not on Thursday night. If there's two markets, other than you have Mahomes, who's going to create the eyeballs from 2 to 5 that day on a Friday, is there another market like LA, or is there another market you're targeting where where Amazon wants to sell at, where they really want to get the bang for their buck? But with it being on a West Coast, if it'd be a West Coast road game, that would be tough, just purely from the time it would be out there. With the kickoff at that time. So would that be a Chiefs Chargers in Kansas City? Would that be another game here? But I feel like the AFC North is going to be more prominently featured in the Chiefs primetime games than we realized, to where 2 were primetime, then 2 were split up on CBS potentially.
You make a couple of really great points and compelling arguments here. Yeah, I mean, because you're right. I mean, Amazon's going to get a game of the Chiefs. Question's going to be, could it be a Black Friday game, or would just a regular Thursday night? Might be more valuable for Amazon to have it on Black Friday than
it would be for Mahomes,
than just a regular Thursday night. I mean, as far as just adding viewership. So that might, especially as far as drawing people and promoting it and everything. Yeah, I can see that might be more logical. And you make a really great, compelling case.
Could you imagine Taylor Swift, Patrick Mahomes combination on an Amazon stream?
I mean, you know what? I mean, could they, depending on where they play it, come on. I mean, maybe Taylor does a concert that night after the game. I mean, you never know. I mean, make it a doubleheader. Have to be in the
Well,
right
you
place.
keep talking because I'm gonna look up. I'm
Because
gonna look up that date right now.
I'm not doing it. I mean, no offense, I'm not doing a Taylor Swift concert in Kansas City the day after Thanksgiving at Arrowhead. So too cold. But the 49ers Chiefs game is another one too, because I felt like that one, I mean, just from a thinking of what could you possibly do with it. I mean, it's one of the it's the best biggest game on the NFL schedule this year. I mean, that's the one that was probably going to draw more viewers than any other game. I mean, if they put that on a Sunday night, it might hit 50 million. I mean, it would be huge. But you make a really good point because the Chiefs don't have that many, prime Fox type games. I mean, they would probably have to give Fox something to, because the time, like the Saints, and especially if like the Buccaneers or the Saints ends up on Thursday night, that's a game you're taking from Fox. Like you said, everything's a jump ball now, so there's other games you could give to Fox, but which ones? I mean, because there's a lot of games that other networks want too. I mean, everybody wants the Ravens, Bengals, Texans. I mean, those are all prime games. So, yeah, you're right. Leaving the 49ers Chiefs on Fox might make the most sense. I had it as a Sunday night game. The question for me was going to be, do you make that early in the season so it's a Super Bowl rematch, or do you put it late in the season so it's a Super Bowl preview? I mean, that was something that stood out from Mike North's points about, sometimes these games, and I could see both. The Bengals, I hope, is early because I think we want to see, Burrow and Mahomes after Burrow gets a couple of games, get his feet wet, but not before that offensive line gets him killed again. So don't make Chiefs Bengals in December. We need to see that earlier.
I agree with you, sir. And then I looked it up just for you. Taylor Swift's concert tour would be on the Canada side at that point. So it would be back near the States, but she would be wide open that entire week if they're trying to, because both know, man, if you're Amazon, you're pushing to get that Chiefs Black Friday game on your stream the day after to get people to spend money, and you want to figure out a way. I hate to say it this way, but from a marketing perspective, you want to attach Taylor Swift to that somehow if you can.
Very, very true. I hope that the NFL is listening, because I think we had some good ideas here.
I feel like they've already been having these discussions for the past handful of months.
True. We are probably echoing their conversations.
Yeah. So I think we've done everything we can to brace people for the schedule about what to think about, what to see, what ends up occurring. So is there any final thoughts you got, Matt?
I just want to know, I mean, do you think how many noon games do you think the Chiefs are going to play on a Sunday?
Here's my hopes. Doesn't mean it's going to happen, but the hopes I have is if Chiefs Saints isn't on, if it isn't the Thursday night opener, I see that as a noon game on Fox. Chiefs Falcons, I could see as a noon game on Fox. I could see it initially being a noon game on Fox, but it gives them the chance to switch to where they do it on one of the weeks where it's Fox's rotation, a doubleheader, to where Fox can just easily move the time and doesn't have to worry about jumping through any hoops as a gift. Then I also think the Chiefs Panthers game, if it doesn't go international like you're talking about, then I think that maybe, see, here's where the kicker is though with the bye week. You're going to have, if the Chiefs go overseas, you're going to have to put the bye week somewhere either before or after it. So that if you do that international game, you've got to do that sometime in November. And if they're going to do the Black Friday game, and you've got to wrangle that all together collectively. So that'll be interesting on that front. But I am going to go, I fully expect to be wrong, but I'm going to go at least 3 noon games this year.
Wow, you're brave. I think you are
most
right.
Of that's because I think most of it's because of the NFC South, though.
It is because of the NFC South. I mean, the Panthers and the Falcons games are just going to be dogs.
But if you give those two Fox, you give them the chances to move those. You give them on the weeks where it gives them the chance to move the 325. So you're like, hey, we'll potentially give you, 4 opportunities for you to put them in your, in your doubleheader window.
Well, and I'm with you on the handicapping of the top 3 possibilities for the Thursday opener. I definitely think it's Texans, Saints, and Buccaneers. I've been all along saying that the Buccaneers are my sleeper game because of the Mahomes, the Baker Mayfield story, 26-15 quarterback room. They're both there. I mean, and the Buccaneers could be the Detroit of last year. Maybe they're the playoff team that sneaks in and makes some noise this year. They've got some marquee players. They got some big names, like you said. I mean, it's a chance. Texans is. It's become such a trendy pick now that I'm like thinking, okay, well, it's going to be the Texans. The NFL's not going to go off base, but I tell you what, the Chiefs opening the season against New Orleans and finishing in New Orleans is also a great storyline. I mean, I think it's going to be one of those three. There's none of those other games. I don't think it's going to be a divisional game. It'll be one of those three. I'm going to stick with my gut and not my head. My head says Texans. My gut says Buccaneers. So I'm going to go Buccaneers, Texans, Saints.
All right, Matt.
We'll see what happens. We'll find out on Wednesday. And yes, if you do come on to the Q&A on Tuesday night and you don't ask us about who is playing in the Thursday night opener against the Chiefs, Nick will be very, very disappointed. To the point where he'll be so disappointed that he'll never take your question ever again. So
wow, dude, you're putting that out in the atmosphere, putting those type of vibes out there, bro.
I'm just having a good time because we're talking the schedule and I'm just happy. So
yeah, so
I'm glad we're getting a schedule this week.
And so yeah, we're gonna work on after the schedule is done. We're working on trying to get an interview with Michael North and really kind of talk about the Chiefs specific for the most part. So we'll see if we can be able to get that booked, and Matt and I will give our reactions to schedule at some point because I don't know what all I'm going to have to do that night for my employer, KSHB 41. So until that is situated and resolved, who the heck knows? So
yes, we're going to figure out Wednesday night. I'm hoping to have something on the Chiefs Digest YouTube channel that night, whether Nick's involved or not. I really hope Nick can be involved, but we'll figure out something. Tuesday night, the live Q&A, Chiefs Digest, bring your questions. You can be schedule related or anything else in Chiefs Kingdom. There's plenty of other subjects to talk about. And of course, next week, we'll be back on your feed here with 41 is the mic. So I have nothing else to add, Nick. It is all up to you to take us out.
And I'm going to do it for the two special users in the comments section. A little different twist today, but to all the mothers out there, I bid you adieu.